Hi, we're Ariel.
And Michelle,
and
we're
we're
the
the
board
Board
game
Game
tutors.
Tutors. Today we're doing our Advanced Concepts video, ironically, for one of the oldest Summoner Wars factions, one of the original starting factions of Summoner Wars, the Guild Dwarves, which are led by their summoner named Oldin. And this comes in one of the two original boxes that Summoner Wars came in with when it first came out from Plaid Hat Games. It comes in a small box, and basically we're going to go over briefly what comes in the box, and then we're going to start with Oldin's what comes in his deck, all the cards. So first, you have a rule book, which you don't necessarily need if you're watching these videos, because you can just listen and learn from different examples on how to play the game. It comes with this basic standard paper mat, which doesn't look very pretty, but it gets the message across. It tells you what the board looks like, where you can place your cards. There's your draw deck, your magic deck, and your discard deck stacks. So you can put your cards in those different places. I realize it might not be very clear looking to you all because this does reflect a fair amount. So we're not going to be using that. We're actually going to be using this mat beneath it, which comes from the Summoner Wars Alliances set, because it shows up better on the camera and it doesn't have nearly as much glare as this paper mat does. So it has a paper mat, it has a rule book, it has wound markers over here, and dice, and the two decks of cards, the Guild Dwarves and the Cave Goblins. So I'm going to move this mat out of the way, so that way we can see the all nice and pretty mat. Okay, so like I said, this mat here, which is in full color, comes from the Summoner Wars Alliances set. And so, yes, this does not come in the Guild Dwarves and Cave Goblins set. If you want this mat, you need to get the Alliances set to get it. It's basically a mouse pad kind of material, neoprene. Anyway, alright, so let's go ahead and get started with Oldin's deck.
So this card shows the starting setup for Oldin's deck.
Tells you where to put all the starting units. And you flip it over. It tells you all of Oldin's event cards and the turn phase summary. If you're not familiar with this turn phase summary or any of the basic rules about Summoner Wars, we advise you to check out our Just the Basic series on Summoner Wars. We did a 3-part series on all the basic rules of Summoner Wars.
And there's a link for that below this video.
Right. Okay. Next, this is one of Oldin's walls. He has 3 of them, and they're pretty standard, 9 hit points. We've gone over this several times already in other videos about Summoner Wars.
And then here's Oldin, the summoner of the Guild Dwarves. His attack value is 2, he's a ranged fighter, and he has 6 hit points.
And he has no summon cost because he's a summoner.
His special ability is called Stone Melding. When an opponent rolls to attack Oldin, if Oldin is adjacent to a wall card, he only receives wound markers from die results of 4 or higher during that attack. So basically, Oldin is strengthened by being next to a wall, and it's harder to hit him whenever he's adjacent to a wall. You have to get a 4 or higher instead of the usual 3 or higher.
So if Oldin is adjacent, above, below, left, or right to any wall, including enemy walls, stone melding comes into effect. So if your opponent was rolling, let's say, 2 dice against Oldin, they have to be 4, 5, or 6. So in this example, 2s don't normally count anyway, and 4s do count. He only receives wounds from 4, 5, or 6. So if someone rolled a 3, that would not count against him, and then he would receive. In the first example, he would only receive 1. In this example, he would still only receive 1 because 3s do not count next to a wall for Oldin.
Okay. Then here is the first common unit called an Engineer. It has a summon cost of 1, an attack. So there's summon cost of 1, attack value of 1, and is a melee fighter, and it has 1 hit point. And the Engineer's special ability is Structural Analysis. When this Engineer attacks a wall card, add 2 to this Engineer's attack value during that attack. So he normally rolls 1, but when he's attacking a wall, he gets to roll 3.
So this is a hit or miss sort of thing. So if he was rolling just against one person, for example, he'd only roll 1. If he was rolling against a wall, he would roll 2 more. So as you can see, that's what often happens to me anyway when I play an Engineer, because for one, they only have 1 hit point, so they're going to die very fast. And 2, whenever I seem to roll dice with Engineer, even when I roll against a wall where you get to roll 3 dice, I always end up rolling really poorly. Obviously, it's not consistent. It's not always going to happen that you'll roll poorly with engineers, but in my experience, they're very hard to actually do damage against a wall. And even if all 3 of these were successful, then you would only put 3 wound markers on a wall, which are, yeah, that's 3 out of 9, so that's not that many. But there are some event cards that we'll go on to explain later on that can actually help defeat enemy walls a little bit more potently than just the engineers with their possible misses.
All right. Here's the spearman. He has a summon cost of 1, an attack value of 1, is a ranged fighter, and has 1 hit point. His ability is thrust. When the spearman attacks a card that it is adjacent to, add 1 to the spearman's attack value during that attack. So when he does his ranged attack, he rolls 1 die.
So in this example, he would roll 1 against that enemy unit if it was an enemy unit.
Mm-hmm.
If it was adjacent, he would roll 2 dice. Mm-hmm. And so it's pretty straightforward. Ranged 1, adjacent 2.
Okay. Here is the defender.
Mm-hmm.
He has a summon cost of 1, an attack value of 1, is a melee fighter, and has 2 hit points. His ability is engage. When an enemy unit is adjacent to this defender, that unit cannot be moved. So
what you might want to do with this, in terms of using the defender and using his engage ability very well, sometimes you'll want to put a wall right here, right at the edge of your border, and then directly behind that wall place a defender, because now anyone who chooses to move against you, who has extra movement, let's say for example, this person started out their turn here, they can go forward 1 and be stuck, because now the defender has engaged them. And if someone else comes over here, that would also happen to them. They would move forward 1 and get stuck. If they wanted to avoid the defender's engage ability, they would have to go 1, 2, because then they're not directly adjacent to the defender. So this can be really good for stopping enemy movement and preventing them from getting to your summoner, unless they're a ranged unit. Then that would be more of a problem. But yeah, so the defender can help you restrict enemy movement and kind of make a bottleneck, so that way they can't make progress around you.
Okay. All right.
That's the defender.
Then we have the first of the champions that we're going to talk about. His name is Baldar. He has a summon cost of 4, an attack value of 3, is a melee fighter, and has 4 hit points. So that's not a lot of hit points for a champion, but his special ability comes into play regarding his hit points.
And also he rolls 3 dice, which is a lot.
Mm-hmm. So his ability is Shield Block. When Baldar is attacked, if your opponent fails to roll a hit on every die rolled for that attack, Baldar receives no wound markers from the attack. So your opponent has to get all successful die rolls in order to do any damage to Baldar.
So for example, if this spearman rolled 2 against Baldar, he got a 6 and a 1. Since he received 1 missed die result, none of these die results count. So this 6 is effectively a 1 or a 2. Because as long as if it's all successes, then it counts. If there is 1 miss, it does not count. So this can help him stay alive a fair amount, especially against people who roll 3 or 4 dice, because chances are when you're rolling 3 or 4 dice, one of them is most likely going to fail. But anyway, that was that. So yeah, that's a pretty powerful ability, but like we said, he only has 4 hit points. So he's a risk.
Yeah, he still dies more quickly than you might think in our experience. Right. Then we have Thorkur. He has a summon cost of 6, an attack value of 3, is a ranged fighter, and again has 4 hit points. Mm-hmm. His ability is Magic Barrier. Once per turn, whenever 1 or more wound markers would be placed on this card, you may spend 1 magic point to prevent one of those wound markers from being placed on this card. So this can be helpful because it does help prevent wounds against Thorkur, but it's only 1 wound at a time, no matter how many wounds are being done to him at that time. Yeah. And you would spend 1 magic point, and then you would be able to ignore 1 wound marker that that was going to be placed on him.
And you can only do this once a turn. So if he's attacked by multiple people in a turn, this would only work for once during the times that he's being attacked.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's somewhat helpful, but it isn't terribly helpful. Okay. Especially with his 4 hit points. Because, yeah, preventing 1 wound, yeah, he's still pretty weak then.
Mm-hmm. Then we have Gror. He has a summon cost of 7, an attack value of 2, is a melee fighter, and has 7 hit points, so a lot more than the other 2 champions. Mm-hmm. His ability is called Hammerquake. When Gror attacks an adjacent card, all other cards within 2 spaces of Gror are also affected by the attack. Gror is not affected by Hammerquake. So this is important. It says all other cards within 2 spaces of Gror. So this does apply to your own units. It does apply to all walls. It's every card that's on the board within 2 spaces of him, except him.
So, for example, right here, let's say Gror is attacking this person. He rolls 2 dice, both successful. So that means you would put 2 wound markers on this person right here, and you check any space within 2 spaces of Gror. So any card within 2 spaces of Gror. So that would be here, 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 because that's 2 spaces. Here, here, that's 2 spaces. Here, 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 that's 2 spaces. That's 2 spaces. That's 2 spaces. So this wall would also receive 2 wounds. And anyone else, but there's no one else within range. So it's a really, really big hurt radius, I guess you would say, for Gror's Hammerquake. So you really, really, really only want to get him onto your enemy side of the battlefield and put him as far away from your units as possible. Because like we said, you can see here, he hurt the enemy, but he also hurt his own wall. Mm-hmm. And most likely you will have people in this area. So this will hurt your summoner, this will hurt your men, all your units, and your walls. So this isn't necessarily very good for you to play anywhere on your half of the board. Mm-hmm. It would most likely be beneficial on the other side of the board. So, yeah. So Gror, even though he's strong, even though he has more hit points, he is a huge liability issue. So you don't want to use him too much, and you want to use him very carefully.
Mm-hmm. Now we're going to go over the event cards. This first one is called A Hero is Born. Mm-hmm. Search your draw pile for a champion card. Reveal the card, then place the card in your hand and shuffle your draw pile. So you're going to go to your draw pile here, which would be in that spot, and then you would pick it up and search for the champion card that you want that's still in the deck. Mm-hmm. And then you would take it out, and it says reveal this card, so you have to show your opponent which card you got.
Like you say to your opponent, I am bringing out Gror, or I am bringing out Thorkor. You can only pick one, obviously, and then you shuffle your draw deck again. And this is also very important. You can't take your champion out of your magic pile, and you can't take him out of your discard pile. Yeah. So this does not retrieve from anywhere besides the draw deck. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Then we have reinforcements. Choose an opponent. If you have fewer units on the battlefield than that opponent does, you may immediately summon up to 2 common units to the battlefield without paying their summon cost. So this is pretty simple.
Mm-hmm. So the reason it says choose an opponent is because you could theoretically be playing a 4-player game of Summoner Wars where you're playing against 2 opposing players and they have 2 opposing armies. So as long as you do the mental math, you look at your half of the board, you look at their half of the board, and you see that you have fewer units on the board than they do, then you can do this. And this is a pretty nice card for the dwarves because, like it says, you can immediately summon during your event phase, not during your summon phase. This is important. It's during your event card phase because you're playing this reinforcement card in front of you. You can get 2 free common units. So it doesn't matter how expensive these common units are, they will come out onto the board for free. So that can be pretty helpful, especially because if you have fewer units than your opposing player, that probably means you're kind of behind. So yeah, this is a good, I guess you could call it catch-up mechanic for the dwarves.
And you do have to already have the common units that you want to summon in your hand.
Right. You cannot take them out of your draw pile. You have to currently have 2 eligible common units in your hand to play out of your hand while playing reinforcements simultaneously.
Yeah, and it's up to 2, so you could do just 1 if that's all you have or that's all you want to do for some reason.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, obviously the best usage of this is 2.
Mm-hmm. Then we have Heroic Feat. Choose a unit. Add 2 to the chosen unit's attack value for the remainder of this turn. So pretty simple. You're going to add 2 dice to whichever unit you designated. And so during this turn, they'll get to roll 2 more dice than usual.
Okay. So for example, with Baldar, if you play Heroic Feat on Baldar, he would roll 5. Add 2.
So that's huge, obviously.
Yeah, that's pretty big. So you might wait to summon Baldar on the enemy side of the field, or Gror for that matter, actually, and then use Heroic Feat on them during your event phase, and then just have them whack away at the enemy summoner, enemy army. So, yeah. That's that. Oh, and also one clarification point. On reinforcements, it says you may summon 2 common units to the battlefield. So that means you still have to follow summoning rules of you have to have spaces on the battlefield. So if you don't have enough adjacent spaces next to a wall, you cannot do this.
Right.
So if all your walls are surrounded, this would be useless to play because you can't summon people onto the board if there's no space next to a wall.
Right. Okay.
So that was that, and that was Heroic Feat as well.
Okay, so next event card is Magic Drain. Choose an opponent. If you have fewer units on the battlefield than that opponent does, remove up to 2 cards from the top of that opponent's magic pile and place them on top of your magic pile. So Magic Drain exists in some other decks too that we've gone over in the past. But yeah, it basically just lets you take 2 magic from your opponent and make those your 2 magic that you put on your magic pile.
And obviously, the ideal time to use this is when you can look at your opponent's magic pile and see they have at least 2 cards in it. Because if they only have 1, you're not using this card to the full extent that you can use this card. And also, you have to have fewer units on the battlefield, so you have to keep that in mind as well. Keep up that mental calculation of I have 3, he has 5, etc. And obviously it changes from turn to turn because some of your units will die, some of his units will die, etc. So yeah, Magic Drain, pretty straightforward overall.
Then we have Besiege the Walls. Choose an opponent. Add 3 wound markers to each of the chosen opponent's wall cards. So this is another pretty straightforward one. You're able to place wounds on your opponent's walls, and you do this automatically. There's no die rolling involved. Yeah, and there are 2 of these, I think.
Yep.
Yeah, there are 2 of these in the deck. So you'll have 2 different opportunities where you can place 3 wound markers each time. So like if you had both copies of Besiege the Walls in your hand, you could play them both at once, and then you'd be putting 6 wound markers on each of your opponent's walls.
And also, so this is kind of hard to orchestrate, but many of these event cards that come in Oldin's deck, they are stackable in terms of the fact that you can play more than 1 copy of an event card during your event phase. So you have 2 copies of Heroic Feat, 2 copies of Besiege the Walls, 2 copies of Magic Drain, 2 copies of Reinforcements, and only 1 copy of A Hero is Born. With Reinforcements, you probably aren't going to be able to stack those together because you would need to have all the cards that you would need, the common units as well as the 2 cards, so that probably wouldn't work out. But with Magic Drain, Besiege the Walls, and Heroic Feat, these are all stackable, meaning so if you use 1 Heroic Feat card on Baldar, that means he gets 2 more dice, he would become a 5. If you also happen to have your other Heroic Feat card on hand, you can make Baldar roll 7. So that is an important distinction. Stackable cards, that means their abilities, they just continue to build on each other. So for Magic Drain, if you had both of your Magic Drains in hand, then you would be able to withdraw 4 magic cards from your opponent's magic pile. And Besiege the Walls, same thing. You have 2 of those, so that means you could add 6 wound markers to all enemy walls. So that is another option. It won't happen very often that you'll have both copies of any of these cards in your hand at any given time. But if you do have that happen to you, that is a possibility. So you can drain magic, you can add a ton of extra dice to 1 person, or you can do a ton of damage to walls. So obviously the Besiege the Walls card can work with an Engineer card to damage enemy walls, but obviously the Engineer has to roll well. In our experience, he hasn't rolled well.
Yeah, so on the same turn, you might play a Besiege the Walls event card, or even two, and then also have an Engineer attack a card to see if you could, occasionally it might work to actually take out a wall if you had the right combination of die rolling and cards.
Yeah, it just with 9 hit points, chances are it won't work out very often for you to take out a wall.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that was Oldin's deck. Thank you so much for watching this instructional video. If you guys wanted to get more basic understanding of how Summoner Wars work, please check out our Just the Basics video, like we said. And yeah, if you enjoyed this content and you want more regular updates from the Board Game Tutors, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And yeah, thank you all so much for watching.
All right, thanks so much for watching. See you in the next video.
Yeah. Bye, guys.
Bye.